So we need to discuss about the stability of ecosystem. The stability of ecosystem. Stability of see, ecosystem makes the biodiversity, and different types of biodiversities we are supposed to discuss. That is biodiversity and perturbed or disturbed biodiversity we need to see. So with the examples we are supposed to see. For preserved ecosystems, you know what is ecosystem basically? Ecosystem is a combination of biotic and abiotic factors of an area. In a particular area, whatever the biotic factors are there, in the sense living organisms, plants, animals, bacteria, all those things, and abiotic factors, there is a water and there's a sand and stones, whatever that particular area that is there, that is called as, all put together, that is called as ecosystem. So in this one, there are certain ecosystems which are preserved or conserved, that is not disturbed since ages. It is wherever you see this particular system, almost the same structure is going to be there. So this kind of ecosystems are called as preserved ecosystems. And in certain cases, the ecosystem is very much disturbed. This is called as perturbed or disturbed ecosystems. Preserved ecosystems which are conserved wherever. See, if you see pond ecosystem, you see in whichever the village, pond ecosystem structure wise it is same, and microorganisms wise also it is going to be the same. Whatever the denaturation work is there, there's a putrefaction work is there which is going on at the base of the pond, is going to be happen everywhere. So the structure wise and the microbial population wise, almost it is preserved or conserved. So this kind of ecosystems are called as preserved ecosystems, and one of the best example out of it is pond ecosystem. I hope you must have studied pond ecosystem at your intermediate or sometime. What, Gautam?
Yes, sir.
What elements of pond ecosystem? Several times you people must have studied this pond ecosystem. What are the elements of this pond ecosystem? What are the parts of pond ecosystem? These are actually lake ecosystem and pond ecosystems are
Limnatic
almost same. Yeah.
littoral zone, limnatic zone, and profundal zone.
There is a littoral zone which is having a terrestrial connectivity with the water. So some rooted plants will be there in that area, and there will be certain floating plants are also in that one. So the plants are there in the littoral zone, and there is a light penetration in that one. And limnatic zone, this is a bit deeper area. This is a bit deeper area, and generally our planktons will be there on the top surface. Very few will be there, and at the base, the one which is there, that is called as benthic zone. You see here, you can see in detail the littoral zone, limnatic zone, and there's a, see, the topmost zone is called as photic zone because light penetrates into that one, and aphotic zone, just beyond the light penetrates from it, it is called as aphotic zone, and that is called as profundal zone also. Aphotic zone is also called as profundal zone, and the base, the one which is called as benthic zone. So see, almost either it is a lake ecosystem or pond ecosystem, this is going to be the common. Pond ecosystem, see, the zones are small, like whether it is a littoral zone, a limnatic zone, or this is a benthic zone, profundal zone, euphotic zone, whatever may be. These are smaller one, whereas lake ecosystem are lake ecosystems generally they are large in size. You can say that lakes are larger scale ponds. We can consider them, and see, our interest is we need to see that we need to prove that almost all ponds. See, these zones are for ecosystem classification. We are talking about microbial system, microbial pond ecosystem. So what will be the microbes that you are expecting in littoral zone? What are the microorganisms that you are expecting in limnatic zone? And what you are expecting in profundal zone? And what will be there in the benthic zone? Where the microorganisms will be more, where you are expecting more number of microorganisms, and where the microorganisms you are expecting to be absent. Is it going to happen somewhere the microbes will be absent?
No, sir.
No. Even present in Antarctica, Arctica, and that temperature like 1000 plus degrees Celsius. And here, see, pond ecosystem is a luxurious nutrient medium for the microbes to grow. So obviously, the microbes will be there in all the zones. Microbes will be, but different microbes will be playing different roles at different points. Benthic zones, putrefaction will be taking place in the benthic zone. Whatever the dead and decaying material, whether it is a plant or animal, that will be deposited at the base. So if the benthic microbes, if they are not working, what is going to happen? The pond would have spoiled. The pond water would have spoiled. But that is not happening there. Since years together, the pond is maintaining healthy atmosphere. Even the same case with the lakes also. Okay. So the benthic zone, there's a humification bacteria or putrefaction bacteria. They what they will do? Whatever the dead and decaying the plants and animals are there, they will occupy on them, and they will do the complete clearance of those animals and plants. That is called as putrefaction process. It is must and should in an ecosystem. There must be putrefying bacteria. You must be aware there is a petroleum reserve. Petroleum products are there at the ends of the oceans. Why? Because huge animals, see, they will be killed inside the ocean or maybe outside the ocean, and due to the waves they will be trapped inside, and at the mostly there's a in the euphotic zone they will be they must be there in the euphotic zone, and sometimes they will be shifted into the littoral zone, and there the bacteria will decompose it, and see, sometimes it merged inside the, and this degraded or decomposed material will be taken up by the soil, and due to high pressure and long durations preservation time, it will be turned into there's a organic fuels kind of things. So what are the areas which are involved in putrefaction process? What are the bacteria that you are expecting to do the putrefaction process? What bacteria that you are expecting? See, the important role, see, everywhere, every zone, the bacteria are involved. But to maintain healthy atmosphere or hygienic, clear atmosphere of there's a putrefaction bacteria are very much involved, and so now let's see some. Can you give some examples of putrefying bacteria? All the gram-positive bacteria are capable of doing putrefaction. Bacillus subtilis, Clostridium, different species of Clostridiums are there. No? And see, is it apart from the microorganisms, is it any other thing that is going to do the putrefaction process? Apart from bacteria, is there anything that will do the putrefaction process? Anything else that can do the see, saprophytic fungi? Does the fungi will survive in water? Aquatic fungi are also there. Aquatic fungi, dead and decaying material. There's aquatic fungi, as well as there are some ciliates, the protozoans. We call it like ciliates, and other are also there. So there are ones which will be feeding on this dead and decaying material, and this fungi as well as the protozoans, they will be there in the littoral zone. Now that is a benthic littoral zone. we can call it as a benthic littoral. See, benthic zone is there on the littoral zone as well as there is a limnotic zone. It is there on both the cases. But here, that is protozoans. See, if you are going in the highest, deeper, when you are going more deeper, then a lot of pressure is applied on the microorganisms. So the protozoan cannot sustain the pressure. The protozoans cannot sustain the pressure, so they cannot tolerate high pressure in the limnotic zone. Whereas in littoral zone, the depth of this littoral zone is not high, so they can tolerate this protozoans as well as fungi, saprophytic fungi. And in this, whatever the euphotic zone, this profundal zone. In profundal zone, see the diatoms. Diatoms are unicellular algal forms. Sometimes they are flagellate, and they are this kind of thing. Their structure, they are rigid structures. They are rigid structures, and they will do the photosynthesis in the photic region. There is a littoral region and limnotic region, and once the photosynthesis part is over, if they cannot do the photosynthesis, they will be settling down in the profundal zone, benthic profundal zone. The profundal is a deeper zone, isn't it? So the diatomish earth, it can be collected from the deeper zones, not from the shallow zones. Shallow zones is a littoral zone actually, and deeper zones is a euphotic, or you can call it a profundal. Profundal is a better term for it. Okay. So littoral zone. What microorganisms you are expecting in littoral zone? What will be there in the littoral zone? See, one more. Let me complete benthic zone first. In benthic zone, there's a petrification zone. Mostly the bacteria are anaerobes. Anaerobic microorganisms are going to be there in the benthic zone because it is a deeper one. Oxygen availability in that area will not be there. Only anaerobes. Whatever I told you, Clostridium species and this Bacillus species, they are the anaerobes. They can survive in anaerobic conditions and they will decompose plants, animals, and dead and decaying materials. Okay, that is about and in benthic, and see, that is also important. Benthic zone plays important role in there's a preparation of crude fuel products. There's petroleum products are manufactured because of the benthic zone. And not in the pond's ecosystem. Pond ecosystem is a very small ecosystem. That is a lake ecosystem. I told you pond and lake ecosystems are almost similar. Only the exception is size-wise. And literally, see, generally, if the pond ecosystem, in the sense, in microbial terms, we think about only the benthic zone because petrification is taking place and the health of the pond is maintained. So everybody thinks that it is the only benthic zone where the microbial population is high. That is not true. Actually, the microbial population in littoral zone is more than that of benthic zone. And microbial diversity is very high in littoral zone. Here, benthic zone, the microorganisms are very high, but richness of microbial diversity is not there. Means like many different types of microbes are not there. Only few species are there. Whereas in littoral zone, the microbial diversity, what we are talking about here, the paper, is the littoral zone is having huge biodiversity. In the sense, multiple types of species are there here. What we can expect multiple species here? There are certain species which are floating on the top, like photosynthetic, maybe cyanobacteria or algal forms, and algal, different types of algals are there. Even there's a euglena kind of thing. So certain protozoans, photosynthetic protozoans. So they are all will be there in the littoral zone, topmost littoral zone. And in the suspension, and in the base also, the microorganisms are there. Microorganisms are there which will be habitated on the plants. There are certain in the littoral zone. the plant rooted plants are there, suspended plants are there, and floating plants are all there. All three kind of plants are there in the littoral zone, and light is very much penetrating into it. So photosynthesis taking place happily in this area. Huh? And certain bacteria, algal forms, they will be even rooted, and there are some suspended. There are a few of them are floating at the top, like some like plants, how they are doing. Similarly, algal forms also will be doing the similar thing. Algal and bacteria also will be doing. So one of the activity that is done at littoral zone is photosynthesis, and photosynthesis is essential to maintain the oxygen level of the atmosphere, as well as the nutrition of the pond. See, you are not getting the food from some, but maximum you should get the food from the photosynthesis. And that photosynthesis, see, the plants also contributing, but in pond ecosystem, it is the algal forms which is When did we got disconnected? Gautam,
Yes, sir. 10 minutes
like,
back. Sir.
did we completed this pond ecosystem completely?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Arey, you should inform me, na? Just I am going on. Just I am there in the perturbed biosystem. Either you should message or phone call or something. You should do. I don't know why it is got disconnected. Okay. So once again, just I will review the pond ecosystem. So in the pond ecosystem, see, the zones are mostly conserved. Wherever you go, whether it is India, America, or in Sirsilla or Nizamabad or wherever it may be, the areas, the zones are highly conserved, and the microbial population is also highly conserved. That's what this is called as preserved ecosystem. So the important zones are littoral zone, limnatic zone, and profundal zone, benthic zone. Littoral zone is just the zone which is connecting the pond with the terrestrial zone, the terrestrial outside. Here you will be having there's a the plants are also rooted plants and merged plants, and the suspended plants are also there, as well as floating plants are also there. Similarly, the microbes are also some algae. They will be attached. Rooted algae are also there, and some of them are suspended, and some of them are floating. And here the protozoans are also there. Dinoflagellates are also there, and here the basic role of this littoral zone is production as well as primary consumption also. There are certain protozoans. There are certain protozoans which will be feeding on this unicellular microorganisms. So that is about littoral zone. And littoral zone, see, even though the tidal movements are coming, but in the littoral zone, because it is attached with the base, much disturbance is not taking place in this region. So the productivity is very high in the littoral zone. Limnatic zone, it is a highly floating area. There will be highly tidal movements will be coming in this region. Lot of movements will be. Nana,
we are not able
yes?
to see the presentation, sir.
Presentation you are not able to see now. Okay, I think presentation mode has this. You'll be able to see now. So limnatic zone, it is a highly like moving and a highly unstable area. Even though the productivity is there, there are certain photosynthetic bacteria and cyanobacteria and algal forms are also there, but they are not unstable. They are not stable over there because of the tide movements. Just they get disturbed here and there. They move here and there. Okay, and this just and limnatic zone. Here, what happens here? This the invaders are birds, such kind of thing. They comes and enters into it. There's a limnatic zone, and even with their movement, with the tide movements as well as the invaders movement, means in the sense something coming out from it. It could be ships or it could be birds or whatever may be. The stability of the limnatic zone gets disturbed, so the productivity is less in the limnatic zone when you compare with the littoral zone. Okay, and mostly it is going to be the only green photosynthetic cyanobacteria, algae, and bacteria are all there in that area, and mostly just below the limnatic zone and above the benthic zone, the area whatever it is there, it is called as euphotic zone, or it is called as profundal zone. Euphotic zone because it does not permit the light to penetrate into it. Light will not be penetrated into it. Profundal zone is a deeper zone where actually the photosynthetic microorganisms will not be there. Microorganisms are not there in the profundal zone. But here, actually, the putrefying bacteria starts from the profundal zone itself. Putrefying bacteria, but their number enriches when it goes to the benthic zone. When you go to the benthic zone is a there is a connecting between the land and there is a soil and water. That is called as benthic zone, and where the decomposition of organic matter is taking place. But the number of the putrefying bacteria starts from the profundal zone itself. It starts from the profundal zone itself. So likewise, there is a stability in case of littoral zone because of rooted plants are there and there is a soil attached to it, and there is a terrestrial zone is also there in that one. Normally succession takes place in the pond ecosystem. When the succession, have you heard about succession? Hello? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Kindly respond. I don't know whether your line got disconnected or not. So succession is like a conversion of one ecosystem into other. So this pond ecosystem, when it is getting converted into terrestrial ecosystem, this is called as there is a so this is one succession. So in this case, even though succession is taking place, see what happened. Littoral zone gets converted into terrestrial area. Terrestrial maybe loss of water, or could be dead and decaying material. Benthic zone, increasing of benthic zone and adding of soil into it, so that your profundal zone gets reduced, profundal zone gets reduced, and see limnatic zone gets shifted towards the right side. Littoral zone will get some part of the limnatic zone gets converted into littoral zone now, and part of the littoral zone gets converted into terrestrial zone. But the zones are still maintained the same. Still, there will be a littoral zone in which we will be having floating and there's suspended, there's microorganisms, and there will be a benthic zone where the putrefaction is going on continuously. There will be a profundal zone where the big animals will be there in that one. In the lakes, big animals. In case of ponds, it is not going to just fishes. That's quite enough. Okay, this is about pond ecosystem, and it is conserved wherever it may be. It may be like US or like whatever the area, Sirsilla, Hyderabad, or wherever it may be. The microbial population in a pond ecosystem and the zones are going to be conserved. Same thing. That's what it is called as conserved or preserved ecosystem. Now we'll see the second thing, perturbed or disturbed ecosystems. Perturbed or disturbed ecosystems. Can you give some examples of perturbed or disturbed ecosystems? There are many around you. Perturbed ecosystems. Can you name few? Paddy field ecosystem. In paddy fields, if you see, in olden days, organic manure used to be used, or farm there's animal waste was used to be used as a fertilizer. But now there's hardly, we are depending on the chemicals only. Even to remove the weed, we are using pesticides. So that it is very unfortunate, and it has disturbed the ecosystem completely. If you see organic farming fields, if you see where there's a chemical fertilizers are not being used, there you can see where the pesticides are not being used. You can see a lot of algal forms growing, algal blooms you can see in the paddy fields. Greenery you can see in the paddy fields. But now, because of the pesticides utilization, they have disappeared. Very few here and there you will be able to see only. This is a disturbed or perturbed ecosystem. This disturbed or perturbed ecosystems. This is the problem of. And see one more thing. This pond ecosystem, whatever we discuss, this is the natural systems, natural ponds. But if you go into the ponds which are being used for the fish cultivation or prawn cultivation, and if you are expecting the conserved situations, that is not possible. That is not possible, and that does not comes under the natural pond ecosystems. So here one of the best perturbed ecosystems which studied by the international scientific community is microbial ecosystems of terrestrial Antarctica. Antarctica, where is this Antarctica? Where is this Antarctica located?
At the bottom of the
Bottom, top?
bottom, sir.
Bottom, Antarctica. So it is a very cold region. It is a very cold region. It is located on the top of the globe. Okay. So round the globe untundi. It is located at one side. Manaku geography అవసరం లేదు ఇప్పుడు ప్రస్తుతానికి. And see why it is very important. Why Antarctica? Why the people are like global research centers have, even India has established one research center. Even in microbial population, where there is a scientist Shivaji from CCMB, he retired now. He worked a lot on microbial populations of Antarctica. Why such much importance to Antarctica?
There are many endangered species.
Yeah, one thing is, okay, first before going to the microbes, we'll go into the endangered species. As you said, there are several things which are endangered, and there are few of them are in the extinction phase, which are generally not available in the normal part of the world. There are many which are extincted and which are endangered in species are also there. Extincted in the sense disappeared completely. Endangered in the sense which are about to disappear. There are many. So it is why these many like why extinction and then biologists are doing a lot of nonsense now over there. They want to isolate. See, most of the Western countries are having low temperature. Most of the Western countries, even UK, US, Canada, all of them are having the low temperatures. So the enzymes which we isolate in India, which works at 25 to 30 degrees Celsius, they may not be suitable for US. Isn't it? The enzymes, see, in your detergents, we are using lipase as well as protease. This is to remove the dirt. Protein dirt is removed by protease, and lipase oil dirts are by the lipases. So these enzymes, what we isolate, they works at 20 to 25 degrees Celsius, 30 degrees Celsius, whereas the temperature which is there in US and UK or Canada, such kind of things, there's a polar region countries, there the temperature is low, and in washing machine also they cannot expect to use the water of 30 degrees Celsius. They will be using the water of 4 degrees Celsius somewhere. So in such cases, that's our normal enzymes may not be that fruitful. So the lot of industries are trying to explore the microbes of Antarctica region. They have started working isolating of microbes and isolating the enzymes which are responsible for lot of industrial applications, even for the brewing also. Brewing, sir, for beer preparation, we need to do the aging at low temperature, fermentation also at low temperature, and this fruit pulp clarification at low temperature. So lot of activities are done at low temperature. So such kind of things, if you want, you should have a bacteria of growing at low temperature. You should have the enzyme of doing the activity at low temperature. See, normally we keep all our things as well as our enzymes at low temperature in the fridge, where the temperature is 4, and we are expecting that at low temperature that nothing should work, isn't it? But see, their expectations are to work at low temperature. it should, the laundry enzymes or detergent enzymes should work at low temperature. That is 4 degrees or whatever, sub-zero sometimes also it should work. That's what the people are running for it. Some people are working for biodiversity and some people are industrial exploitation. Everybody says biodiversity, but their ultimate goal is exploiting the microbes for industrial purpose. This is actually Antarctica. There is a peninsula. This is which the peninsula, the land which is surrounded by water is called as peninsula. And here we'll be collecting the soil samples and we'll be observing. There's an alarming situation I want to show you in this Petri plate. You can here the one alarming situation that see how the people will collect the samples, make it dig over there, and they will collect the sample from that area, and melted snow, whatever the melted snow water you will be getting, that is filtered, and from that filter they will be getting the samples and they will be working. And this is one case which I want to highlight. This is work by Dr. Shivaji of CCMB. You can see he worked on yeast. There's some vitamin yeast, some enzyme producing yeast, and some probiotic yeast which grows at low temperature that can be used for the Western people. So this is the yeast which is having drug resistant. Drug resistant. This actually antibiotic resistance. You must be aware. This because of uncontrolled antibiotics, this antibiotic resistance develops. Methicillin resistance, Staphylococcus aureus is there, and many bacteria. There's a pathogenic bacteria are developing the resistance because irregular usages of antibiotics. In the poultry, a lot of antibiotics are being used in order to prevent the microbial population and diseases into the chicks. And that's how we are getting resistance. In fact, resistance gene is spreading like nothing. And here we believe that Antarctica is a very conserved area where we are expecting that microbial population is conserved over there. And here you can see that antibiotic resistance it is developing. You can see the antibiotic resistance. The yeast bacteria, they are getting antibiotic resistance, and see, the antibiotic could not able to kill the yeast. Actually, it should kill, but it is not killing. In the sense, there's a antibiotics even in the Antarctica regions are being explored. Such a nonsense. And see, when you are going further for collecting something, there are lot of invading microorganisms or foreign microorganisms are entering into that area. Actually, what happened when the popular ecosystem of one particular area, if it is not disturbed, it will not be spoiled. It will not be disturbed at all. But if something goes and enters into it, the invaders, so are foreign species. So what happened? Human beings are going for their activities over there. They are releasing their see, the human scientists are going, and one is climatic activity, climate change. There is a lot of storms will be coming in that area. That's what it is not stable like your pond ecosystem. Lot of changes do come, physical changes do come in that area. That's what the microbial population gets changed. It is not stable in that area. That's the one reason. Anyhow, there is a natural calamity. You cannot avoid it. The second, the most important reason is the human exploitations. Because of the human exploitation, we are going and doing our work over there. Research centers are established over there. And because of the research centers and human activities, what happened? Natural microbial population is getting disturbed. The natural microbial system is very much disturbed here. So there are two regions. One is there's a climatic change, and second is human activities. The diversity is being lost here, and it is going to be disturbed. This is about conserved and disturbed ecosystems. Now we'll go into the sustainable ecosystems, microbiome for the sustainable agroecosystems. This is a microbiome first. The sum number of microbial population associated in a plant or in a animal or in a human being or in an ecosystem is called as microbiome. Microbiome is a some number of microorganisms associated with a plant. You take one plant can also be an ecosystem. One human being can also be an ecosystem, or you can take plant this ecosystem, or this terrestrial or whatever maybe. So some microbial population, and in molecular aspects, the sum number of genes associated present in a total number of microbes in a associated with a plant or animal or ecosystem is also called as microbiome. Once again, I will repeat you. See, some total number of microorganisms associated with one organism or one ecosystem is called as microbiome. Biome is called as total number of biomass. If it is a microbial biomass, it is called as microbiome. That microbiome we study in terms of there's a individual organism or ecosystem. If it is a plant ecosystem, if you take the individual plant, one chinta chettu or something, one plant, so it is the some number of microorganisms associated with this plant is called as that plant's microbiosystem. And there is a one more see, some total number of there's a genome, some total number of genes associated with that plant microbes is called as also its microbiome. So okay, that's fine. So there are huge number of see, there is a one more thing. There's a sustainable development, agroecosystem, sustainable agroecosystems. What do you mean by sustainable? What do you mean by sustainable? Hope you got the concept of microbiome. Total microbial population in terms of biomass or in terms of genes of a or animal or a ecosystem is called as microbiome. That's very clear. So it is for sustainable agroecosystems. What is this sustainable? Sustainable in the sense, if we are exploring this ecosystem, and you should explore it as such that it should be, you can explore now and it should be made available for future generations also. In the sense, you should not explore entire thing at a time. If there is a mango tree, see, you can explore with mangoes, you can explore with its leaves, you can explore with its branches, you can explore with its pulp, you can explore with its there's a wood also. So if you want sustainable, what you should do, you should not cut the plant. You should see, you can cut also, but simultaneously you should plant more trees. You should plant more trees, and you should enjoy its mangoes, its shade, and its leaves, and its twigs. And once the new plants are coming, you can cut this plant. We don't have an issue. The sustainability, the concept of sustainability is, you should make use of the resources, but at the same time, you should make sure that these resources are available for next generations also. So how the microbiome helps in sustainable agrosystems? In agriculture systems, in agriculture process, how this this microbiome, that's a microbial population, how it helps in sustainable there's a how it helps in plant growth, and how it helps in increasing the yields. All these things are coming under the section of microbiomes for sustainable agroecosystems. what the microorganisms will do with see, this is the petri plate. I think you will be able to see on the left side. This is the phyllosphere. The microorganisms which are present on leaves are called as phyllosphere. In fact, this is a practical that is there for you. You are also supposed to do this one. You will be taking a leaf and you will be putting an impression on the Newton agar plate, and you can remove that leaf from there and incubate at 37 degrees Celsius, and you will be getting the growth of microorganisms which will be which are located on the leaf. So this is called as phyllosphere. Okay, simultaneously there are certain microorganisms in the rhizosphere zone surrounding to the roots, and this is called as rhizosphere. This is called as rhizosphere. So what is the role of microorganisms in sustainability? How come these microorganisms will do what they will do? Microorganisms, they will play different roles here. Here, to say few, they will promote the microorganisms. Microorganisms will promote the there's a growth of the plant. E. coli, your literal small E. coli will promote the growth of microorganisms. It produces indole. You know indole-acetic acid. What is the indole-acetic acid? What is indole-acetic acid? It is an auxin. So the microbes produces auxins, and Gibberella fujicora, there is a fungi that produces gibberellins. Cytokinins are also being produced. See, the growth hormones are being produced by the microorganisms, and they promote the growth of the plants. So is it useful for the plant or not? Definitely, they will promote the growth of the plant. And see, they also prevents the abiotic stress. See, left side, you are able to see that the microbes which are growing which are located on the leaf surface. So if the leaf is directly the UV light, at midday, there will be a lot of exposure, a lot of UV light coming in the sunlight. So if the leaves directly, then what happens? There is a possibility of damage. Whereas if these microorganisms are there as a shield, then what happens? The damage, which is called as abiotic damage, or physical damage, which is created by one could be there is a UV rays or acid rains, and some mechanical damage or whatever may be, that all those things are prevented by the microorganisms. So these abiotic stresses, whichever are there, that can be eliminated by microorganisms. And sometimes they will do the defense. How they will do the defense? See, these many bacteria which are there on the leaves, whenever the downy mildew bacteria or powder bacteria, whenever it comes to infect a leaf, so what happens? These bacteria will not give the space for that pathogenic bacteria to establish over there. They will not. There's normal bacteria which are there on the leaves, which is we call as phyllosphere. Phyllosporic bacteria will not allow the pathogenic bacteria or pathogenic microorganisms to establish over there. So this is how the microorganisms are doing the defense. They are not allowing the pathogens to enter into the leaf. I told you this downy mildew as well as powdery mildew, they have to have an axis of there's a cytoplasm. Otherwise, they will not grow. So these bacteria will not allow the downy mildew or powdery mildew bacteria. There's a fungi to penetrate into it, and induce systemic resistance. What is this systemic resistance? The hardness of the plants. There is a strong bark development. That is by plant as well as microbial activity, and they will protect from the pathogens and invertebrate pests indirectly and directly. And see, indirectly by secretion of pili, because this some bacteria like Klebsiella, you see, I think you people must have seen the money plant growing at home. How many of you are having money plant in water at home? See, it is, if you touch the bark, if you touch the stem of this money plant, it will be mucoid. it will be mucoid because of secretions which are being produced by the Klebsiella species, that is being protective, that is an indirect protection. Even the pili of the microorganisms are also, it does not permit the pathogens to enter. Whereas direct competitions, siderospores, lytic enzymes, antibiotic secretions, and volatile compounds, these are the few mechanisms of indirect protection, indirect secretions. And plant hormones, these are stimuli, growth hormones. And see, sometimes microbial interactions, microbe interaction do takes place, and these microbial interactions like lichens are there, and lichens will help a lot for the plants for the growth. This is the topmost tree. There's a upper zone of the trees, whereas if you go to the rhizosphere zone, if you take the example of rhizosphere zone, lot of support is being done with the microorganisms. Lot of fungi. There's a lot of fungi are associated with roots, and they are helpful in there's a absorption of water, absorption of minerals, and these fungi will provide the water and minerals to the tree, and in return the fungi will get some nutrients and shelter from the. So it is something like rhizoids, symbiotic relation. And that classical example of symbiosis, there is a nitrogen fixing bacteria, that is rhizobium. Rhizobium is the best example for bacteria. The nodules are formed, and even for the nodules to be formed, there are certain bacteria, Bacillus amylolicans is required. Actually, this rhizobium bacteria cannot make a nick over that there's root hairs. So it is a Bacillus amylolicans. If you apply Bacillus amylolicans plus rhizobium bacteria, the number of the nodules is going to be very high. But if you don't apply this amylolicans, generally amylolicans will be there in the agriculture fields, but if it is not used for several years, it won't be there. So there will be a communication in between the bacteria. There will be a relation in between the bacteria, and this communication. See, the communication with amylolicans, Bacillus amylolicans, and rhizobium helps in legume plants to establish more number of rhizoids. Root nodules. And see, the microorganisms are useful in decomposition of organic material, and from wherever the organic material is being decomposed, from there inorganic elements will be released, and these elements are recycled by the plants. These inorganic elements, and not only that, inorganic elements, amino acids are released, and these amino acids are being consumed by the plants. So the microorganisms are totally from top to bottom, they are helping to the plants. In agriculture system, the microorganisms can be used from the top to bottom. See, these are some more elaborated examples. Plant to microbiome and microbiome to plant relations. Plant to microbiome. See, the plant, what it will do, root exudates, it will be providing cell wall component, phytochemicals, defense hormones, and this quorum sensing molecules, antimicrobial compounds. These are the compounds released by the plant, and they are sometimes they are helpful, and sometimes they are harmful for the plants. Whereas in case of microbiome, and microbiome, as I told you, they will absorb, the microorganisms will absorb the nutrients, and they will provide to the plant. Host immune modulators. So whenever pathogen comes into the infection, this is the microbes will do the first defense. So host immune modulators. So toxins from pathogen, toxins are neutralized. Signaling molecules are given. Plant growth regulators like auxins, cytokinins, and gibberellins. Plant growth regulators and the plant defense elictors, and siderospores, biofilm formations. These are the few applications. See how to get a sustainable agriculture. So we discussed what are the microbes associated with the plant. Discussed how we can do, how can we use this microorganisms for a sustainable agriculture system. Microbial inoculations. microbial inoculations, see, it is a microbial, individual microorganism. How the individual microorganisms can be used for increased yield. See, rhizobium is being used whenever you groundnut seeds, when you are germinating, when you are planting that seeds, along with the seeds are coated with rhizobium, and that rhizobium plus seeds are soaked into the fields, that's dropped into the fields. So what happened, whenever seed germinates, the roots are produced, and at the early stage, because the rhizobium is around, so it can colonize over there, and more productivity is achieved. More productivity is achieved in case of this. So this microbial inoculation, and see, even if you don't do the microbial inoculation, if you don't add the rhizobium also, it will go. But the number of population of the rhizobium is less, and root nodules are going to be less. And the population, see, the species, different type of rhizobium species are there, rhizobium, different species are there. So when different types of rhizobiums are coming, it may not be capable of nitrogen fixing, that much nitrogen fixing that what we require. So when you inoculate with a specific type of rhizobium, then there is a possibility of more productivity or more yield in that case. Hope you got. And nowadays, these biofertilizers are being used. Biofertilizers. Biofertilizers are biopesticides. There's a microbial population which kills the disease-causing microorganisms. In this sector, what you call there's a Trichoderma ricci. Trichoderma ricci, wherever the diseases are there, plant diseases are there, wherever the plant diseases are there, you can grow this Trichoderma ricci, and you can apply over these plants. So this Trichoderma is capable of producing some toxins which will kill the other microorganisms, pests or pathogens. So this is how, by using the microbial inoculation process, how sustainable we can increase. See, if you can increase the productivity, that's very important thing for sustainable development. So this you can do, you can increase the productivity by microbial inoculations. There are certain where individual see, these two examples I have given to you. One is rhizobium, another is there's a biocontrol by Trichoderma ricci. These two cases you can apply purely one organism. That's well and good. Well, nice. And plant growth promoting microorganisms. There are certain cases where plant growth promoting growth is not it is whether it is auxin, cytokinin, or gibberellin, or see, it is a multi-dimensional activity. Growth is a multi-dimensional activity, isn't it? So it is for plants we require not only the nitrogen. You see, this rhizobium bacteria will do the nitrogen fixation, but the phosphorus is also very important. Potassium is also a very important thing, and mostly the phosphorus what we supply is insoluble phosphorus. Insoluble phosphorus. Even potash also, majority of the time, 80% of the potash is also in insoluble form. So we should make them solubilized. So what you need to do to solubilize these things, when you want to solubilize potash or when you want to solubilize this phosphorus, what you need to do, you need to secrete, there's a microbial secretion of acids is required in that case. So not only the phytohormone producing bacteria is growth promoting, even acid producers also, if a bacteria is producing acid, it will dissolve your phosphorus over there, and that dissolved phosphorus is very much useful for your plants, and it is available for your plants, and it is happily its growth is promoted in that case. Okay, so in this case, instead of using single microbial population, like we did earlier case, microbial inoculation case, we need to add consortia. Consortia is nothing but group of microorganisms. Different types of microorganisms are being used here. So whenever plant growth promoting activity is required, we will be giving in a mixture kind of thing. So here Pseudomonas is taken, and Bacillus is taken, and Even if it is required, we'll incorporate rhizobium also in that one. So it is a mixture of microorganisms, which will, some will do phosphate solubilization, some will do nitrogen fixation, some will do biocontrol activity. So different activities we'll be doing, so that will lead into a good growth. There's a plant growth is good, amount of plant growth is achieved with a consortial application. When you do a consortial application, when you do, then there is a possible better growth when you compared with the individual microorganism is being used. Okay, next, plant microbial interactions. See, plant microbial interactions, already we discussed. See, symbiotic relations are there, and even parasitic relations are there. Parasitic relations are also there. So the microorganisms, we should interfere, if the pathogenic interactions are there, we should interfere the pathogenic interactions with the normal flora. I told you in the application side first. When the phyllosphere is having a huge number of microorganisms on it, then the pathogens, even though if they are coming in contact, the chances of establishing disease gets reduced. The chances of getting disease gets reduced. So here the healthy plant and microbial interactions. Okay, and there are certain, I told you, siderospores. Certain plants will produce, even bacteria produce siderospores, which are the small molecules which will bind with the metals, and this plants and bacteria will be taking up this siderospores. So what happened? This actually symbiotic relation. The plants provides the minerals from the soil to the plants. This kind of interaction should be promoted. The positive interactions should be promoted, and the negative this relation should be inhibited. And see here, there should be a, we should develop a, see this microbial interaction. In the development of microbial interaction, any bacteria just will not establish or will not colonize on the plants. Any damn bacteria, you are growing the there's a E. coli in the laboratory. If you pour onto the plant, just it will not colonize. There are certain bacteria, there will be a process of assembly of microorganisms. You should favor the conditions for assembly of microbes on the plant. And there is generally, there will be a core microorganisms. See here, priorities affect in there's a initial assembly. You should provide the favorable conditions for establishment of bacteria, microorganisms otherwise. This is very important. Deploying core microorganisms. You should deploy. See, this is the help that you can do. See, damn anything you should not spray on the plant. The core, if these bacteria are established, then the normal other bacteria will be coming over there. Normally, the colonization takes place, this functional recruitment or pathogen. See, some bacteria which are useful may be colonizing over there. Something, the pathogenic bacteria may be colonizing over there. And there will be a central bacteria which is not even pathogenic, not even useful. There are certain bacteria which are not even useful, not even harmful. So what you need to do, you need to establish first this useful bacteria, core bacteria, in the sense the bacteria which are capable to colonize your functional bacteria, functional species. So there are, I told you, Bacillus amyloliquefacans is one example. If the Bacillus amyloliquefacans, if you can spray the Bacillus amyloliquefacans, then what happened? This Bradyrhizobium bacteria will colonize over there. So the core bacteria is here. In this case, the Bradyrhizobium. This Bacillus amyloliquefacans. This Bacillus amyloliquefacans are having a capacity to digest the or to make a hole on the root hair of the legume plants. Once this root hair legume has been created, then what happened? This rhizobim bacteria happily it can enter into it and it can colonize into it. Even the same case, the pathogen also enter into that whatever the hole that is being created. So it is better if we can provide these two together. There is a core bacteria and functional bacteria. If you can put bacteria and functional bacteria put together, then there is a possibility of deploying. There is a establishing assembly of better system. Otherwise, if the damage is occurred over there, then there is a possibility of even pathogen to enter into it. In soybean and maize, there is example Azospirillum brasile. There is a AZ39 species, and there's a Bacillus japonicum. These two are induced put together, and this indole 3 acetic acid is produced in larger quantity, and the growth will be taking place efficiently. So the agriculture management should be done with the core microbes. First, not only the single functional microorganisms, along with that one, colonizing microorganisms should be inoculated. This is about agriculture. So you should not think about only the functional microbes, only the microorganism, which is, if you want to do the sustainable agriculture, see in nowadays biofertilizers or biopesticides, whatever the people are using, they are using only the functional, only one microbe. But if you can do along with the functional, if you can deploy the core microorganism, then there is a possibility of better utilization of these microorganisms, better establishment or better colonization and better functions. That is about and sustainability, sustainable development in agroecosystems. Now, human microbiome, that is about plant, and now we'll discuss about human microbiome. See, there are huge number of microorganisms on the human body, inside of the, they are associated with the body. They are there on the outside of the body, on the skin, nose, every part of our body is associated with the microorganisms. Instead, actually, the number of microorganisms, when you compare to the cells of human being, the number of microorganisms is almost 200 times more than that of human thing. And it is more than 100 trillions of microbes are there in our body, in and outside of the body. Huge number of microorganisms are associated with us. In fact, we cannot survive without microorganisms. And the number is more in our alimentary canal, that is intestine. There is a huge and a lot of microbial diversity is there in case of your microbiome. Different types of microorganisms are there, and we'll see this. See, this is a one paint animation drawing which indicates the importance of the microbial population. Can you name one area in the human body where the microorganisms are not there? Generally, but sometimes even that gets contaminated. It is a vitreous eyeball fluid. Eyeball fluid, generally it is free of microorganisms, but sometimes conjunctivitis and such kind of cases, even that also gets contaminated. So the microbes are there everywhere, especially in alimentary canal, their number is predominating. Huge number of microorganisms are there. The number of microbiome varies by genetical condition, environmental conditions, diet, what they consume, lifestyle, hormones, and industrial environment, what they are surviving. So these are the factors which will contribute. And see, I told you everywhere that microbes are there. And nose, microbes are involved in mucus production, so that and antimicrobial chemicals they are being produced. And mouth helps in the digestion and ward of pathogens. There's the elimination of pathogens. Lungs lubricate pulmonary tissues and prevent. There's a stomach prevents gastric complications. Colon digestion of complex carbohydrates. Sexual organ maintain the pH and the peroxide levels. peroxide production and kills the microbes, other some microbes, and skin, fortify immune system, scent production, such kind of things. These are the some functions of microorganisms. So we don't ever call microbes are not functional, not useful in human body. So in retail, if you see, as I told you, the more of the microbes are there in the alimentary canal. See, the lining will be protected, so they will be first line defense kind of thing. They will be working, as we see in case of your leaves, philosphere. So this bacteria will be colonized as a one layer. Whenever the pathogen or toxin comes, that cannot direct enter into the epithelial tissue, and they produces vitamins. See, vitamin B12. See, it is available in non-veg materials, as well as it is produced only by the microorganisms. Vitamin B12 and vitamin K also. It is being produced only the microorganisms. And immune system development also, non-specific immunity is also inferred with the microorganisms. And there's a intestinal angiogenesis also promoted with the microorganisms. Promotion of there's a fat storage, and there's a even energy liberation process is also helpful by these microorganisms. Fermentation of dietary fibers and modulation of central nervous system. These are some of very important activities. Do you imagine we will survive without these activities? It is highly impossible. And see, these protections are more when the people are exposed more to the dust or allergic kind of situation, bacteria, like India. And when you compare with the Western countries, see, these are more benefits for us. So these are applications for us. So what we should do? There are certain examples are given here. The gut microbiome in the, different obese people and lean people, it is different. Where you are expecting more biodiversity in obese and or lean people. Obese people, whether it is more microbial biodiversity is there, or lean people. In lean people, there is a more biodiversity. In the sense, more different types of microbes are there. But in obese people, see, there are few species, but the number is more, and they are utilized in harvesting the calories. They are very efficient harvesting. More, see, the wastage of energy is less in case of obese people. So whatever the energy that is there, that will be trapped in the obese people. So here the different types of biodiversity, biodiversity is there in case of your lean people. Different types of microbial flora is there in case of your lean people. And in animals, the diabetes is an outcome of the microbial population. In animal studies, it is established that in rat model studies, it is established that the diabetes is an outcome of the increased sugar levels is an outcome of microbial population. And this is dust of there's a microbial population and dog's dust. This is responsible for increasing the immunity. This is one case, fetal microbiota transplantation. This is one of the treatment which is generally preferred. Not here, we don't have this practice, but in Westerns, this is practiced when there is no certain microbial biodiversity or microbial population or gastric ulcers, such kind of thing. Clostridium difficile. This is the one bacteria which is used through colonoscopy or enema. This is and that microbial activities are a chain. And before going to the human applications of microbial, some more applications. There is a major application. Have you heard about the probiotics? Probiotics.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
What is it? Can you define for me?
The products which
What is
increase
this?
the
Probiotics stands for.
microbes in our body.
Okay. It is not product. It is not the product. It is a microorganism itself. The microorganisms which will prevent the entry and pathogenesis of diseases is called as the probiotics. Okay, these are the bacteria itself. These are they could be live or dead. If it is a live, that will be better. You must have seen sachets. Small sachets are there's a Sporolac, Lactobacillus sachet, or sometimes Saccharomyces cerevisiae. These are mixed. Whenever the small babies are having a problem of diarrhea, dysentery kind of thing, whenever they goes to the doctor, doctors first prescribe these probiotics, not immediately the antibiotics. So these see the microbial population, we are enriching the microbial population, healthy. See, why you will get a disease generally? Why that small kid got diarrhea, dysentery? What could be the problem? Here, there are in our intestine, but due to entry of some pathogenic bacteria, there was a tussle in between good and bad. And here there was a success by the bad bacteria. So the good bacteria has removed from there. So the new bad bacteria has established inside the intestine. That's what they are leading into diarrhea or dysentery. Isn't it? This is a simple story how it happens. But when you add good bacteria, more number of good bacteria through oral, if you consume more number of good bacteria, then again this more number of good bacteria will go into intestine. There will be again one more fight in between good and bad. Now the number of good bacteria is more than that of bad bacteria. So the bad bacteria will be removed from there and good bacteria will be colonizing inside the intestine. So this is how the disease is removed. That's how the first, not only the diarrhea case, it is even for the allergies also. Even if you got some allergies or have some digestion problems, or if you have dysentery or acidity, in majority of the cases we can use this bacterias, probiotic bacterias for applications. Okay. So Sporolac, Sporolac is being used since ages. In the beginning, curd used to be, see, the curd used to be dried and made into the powder, and that used to be directly consumed. See, the curd, there is a lactobacillus, huge amount of lactobacillus is there, but it is there in the sheets. That is not separated lactobacillus. So its functional activity we cannot expect much. So consuming milk, there's a butter is much better than that of the curd. Consuming butter, like buttermilk is far better. So just make it, spin it with something or some, so that bacterial population gets dissociated. They get separated from one another. They get separated one another, and it is a good lactobacillus population. And lactobacillus will remain in the intestine for some time, and it will remove the pathogenic bacteria from it, so that the disease, whatever that can be removed. So lactobacillus, see, this is called as probiotics, and lot of probiotic product. Even there is one more Saccharomyces Econam is one great brand. Actually, this Bharat Biotech, who is producing this Covaxin vaccine, they started this one, but now Reddy's product, this Econam, Reddy's lab, Reddy Labs, they are producing Econam. There is a Saccharomyces cerevisiae, and yeast is bit larger than that of your bacteria, so it can colonize large area in your intestine. So one yeast can remove many pathogenic bacteria from your intestine. So it is and Econam, such a great success. And it was in the beginning it was 10 rupees, something for one packet. Now it is almost 50 rupees per packet. I think within a period of 3 years or something. Such a great success story of this probiotic. And just in some corporate hospitals, if you go to Apollo Hospital, they will ask to take only their curd, because the curd is having not only this lactobacillus, it is having a rich of bifidobacterium. Bifidobacterium, it is one of the useful bacteria which comes with the breastfeed. The first bacteria which colonizes in newborn baby is a bifidobacterium. It is very much useful protein digestion, this bifidobacterium. And if you don't have the breastfeed and just there's a bottle feeding, if you are having, the bifidobacteria will not be there, so the babies will not do the digestion of milk properly, so they do the vomitings. So if the protein is not digested, what you will do? And probiotic ice creams are also available. In ice creams, even in fact, last time when we conducted the food festival in microbiology department, we have prepared all these probiotic preparations, probiotic ice creams, probiotics idli. In fact, these fermented products are also rich of the probiotic products. Normal fermentation process, whatever it is going on, that is also with the microbes, and they will help in the. So the microbiome helps a lot in maintaining the good health of human. Now there is a small section, Human Microbiome Project. Like you must be aware about Human Genome Project. Human Genome is the established with an objective of sequencing complete human genomes, and it is at larger extent it is successful. And similarly, we have the microbes associated with the human body. So still it is going on. It is started in 2008 with a budget of let's see, $150 million. It is started in 2008, and still we are in the process. It is actually it was planned for 5 years, but still we are in the process. There are many organisms which are yet to be identified. And especially this Human Genome Project, they are concentrating 5 areas: skin, mouth, nose, colon, and vagina, and the gut microbes. What is the importance of this Human Genome Project, Human Microbiome Project? See, it helps to understand, in different genetical conditions, how the microorganisms are establishing. One small example I will tell you: this Andaman Nicobar people. They don't get malaria. They don't get malaria, even though they are surviving in forests and very terrestrial area, but they don't get any this what you call malaria. But here, African people, even in the subtropical India, we are getting a lot of malaria. Because what is believed is the genetical makeup of those people is different. There's a sporozoite cannot enter because the receptor which is required for the entry of sporozoite those people. And there's a bowels, irritable bowel syndrome, Crohn's disease. These are this association, how the irritable bowel syndrome is associated with the microbes, and how we can control it with microorganisms. We can control with the. This is one of the objective of this Human Microbiome Project. How we can control the diseases by using the microbiome, and how the depletion of microorganisms is taking place due to differential genetical makeup. As I told you, the Andaman Nicobar people, they are having a different genetical makeup. They are having a different genetical makeup. So this Human Microbiome Project aims to understand genetical makeup of a human being and its association with the microbiome establishment. Why the lean people are lean? Why they will be consuming a huge amount of food. They are consuming a huge amount of food, but still they are not. See, some lean people, they will be consuming all bodybuilding products, but still they don't get body mass. What is wrong with them? There are certain bacteria which are there is in fact we worked some of those bacteria in our lab. Some bacteria are associated in the intestine which will not allow the fat to be deposited in the body. That is there in the lean people. And if these bacteria, if you want to colonize in there's obese people, they won't establish, they won't colonize over there. So it may be associated with the gene. See, when in mice model studies, it is not the human studies I'm quoting. In mice model studies, when this obesity gene is inserted, the bacteria are colonizing, and when this is knocked out, then the obesity gene is knocked out, different types of bacteria are colonizing. That you mean to say genetical makeup of an organism also plays very important role. Means there's a, see, like Andaman Nicobar, I told you, the receptor plays very important role. Here also, this could be genetical makeup, could be contributing to the receptors, different receptors, which in the bacteria to bind over there. So, if human microbiome project completes, there's a personalized microbial treatment can be done. Personalized microbial treatment can be done for improving the health. See, now the probiotics are general. They're there in the market. Anybody see this bacillus is being used, lactobacillus is being used, and bifidobacterium is used, and this Saccharomyces cerevisiae is being used. There are few bacteria, and see, mostly lactobacillus is a pure, sporolac is a pure one, and Saccharomyces is a pure one, and remaining all are mixed one. Just anything that if something goes and works good, that is just blindly we are doing the treatment. But once human microbiome project gets completed, we will be able to do personalized treatment or individual treatment. We can give treatment to the person. So this is about human microbiome project. This is with this I conclude the fourth semester. Sorry, there's a fourth unit of the second semester. Now I'll be happy to answer your queries. No, I'll be happy to have an interactive session. I don't know whether you are sleeping, whether you are available for the session, or I don't know. This is not a good practice. Prasad? Prasad, respond. When I am asking from the other side. Just I will close the record now.